Just want to make sure the stream works. Okay, looks like it worked. Good evening, everyone. I'm Zen Master Sebastian Rizzon, founding master of the Zen Art Center and the Mind Light Way School of Zen. I'm glad you're here tonight. We do these Dharma talks on the third Thursday of every month and guided meditations on the first Thursday of every month from 7 to 8 p.m. You can also find them streamed live or anytime after on the Zen Art Center YouTube channel. I always like to start with a question that gets right to the heart of our practice. Here's the question for tonight. We all have thoughts and feelings inside our mind, but some of those come from fear, habits, or social pressure. Some of them come from stories that we've carried for years about who we are and what the world is like. But one of those feelings is different. It's the feeling of our intuition. The question is, how do you really know your intuition? How can you tell if it's your intuition guiding you, or if it's just thoughts, opinions, and narratives that you've absorbed from others and been conditioned to believe? This is your koan for this evening. A koan is a question or a statement or a story that pushes you to look beyond logic and intellectual knowledge. They demand that you cut through surface-level thoughts and reach a deeper understanding. In Zen, meditation is a tool we use to dig deeper, not to answer the question right away with words, but to let the answer reveal itself through the clarity of your mind. So tonight, before we dive deeper into this, let's sit together in meditation and clear our minds so that the clarity can penetrate the layers of thought and reveal what's underneath all of the noise. When we sit for meditation, we're going to sit with our legs crossed. If you're sitting in a chair, you're welcome to put your feet flat on the floor. Try to keep your neck and back straight so you're not slouching. You'll have your hands right hand, left hand, touching thumbs, centered in your lap. Our eyes are going to be closed for most of these meditations, and you'll be, if they were open, they would have at a 45-degree gaze looking at the floor. If you get uncomfortable in any of these positions, feel free to stand up and stretch out. Just try to be mindful of the people meditating around you. With that said, let's get started with a breathing technique that can help you prepare your body for meditation. Start by breathing a little bit slower and a little bit deeper than you usually do. Bring your attention to the center of your chest. Visualize your heart in the center of your chest as you breathe. As you listen to my voice, I want you to keep slowing down and breathing a little bit deeper. Feel your breath coming in through your nose and mouth and collecting all of the energy from your brain and moving it from your head into your heart. Imagine now that you're breathing with your heart. The purpose of this practice is to try to align our mind, heart, and body. You can also place your hand on your heart and close your eyes if you like. Keep breathing slow, deep, and steady. This is a technique you can use to relax or reset yourself whenever you feel anxious, scattered, or whenever you feel like you need to switch gears from different activities you're doing throughout the day. If you practice this technique, you can learn to reset yourself in any moment by reminding yourself to take some slow and deep breaths. Now let's just practice this together for a few minutes and continue to take slow and deep breaths. Now we're going to move into a mantra meditation. A mantra is the focal point of meditation. The word mantra literally means a tool to liberate the mind. In this meditation, we use a mantra to help us free our mind from its usual stream of thoughts, perceptions, and feelings. A mantra can be anything that you focus your mind on, but in sitting meditation, it's usually a word or a phrase repeated silently. While meditating, try not to cling to any thoughts, feelings, opinions, emotions, or desires that arise. If a thought comes, just let it pass and return to your mantra. If you try not to think about anything, thoughts will inevitably still come. However, the more you fully focus on your mantra, the less space there is for other thoughts to take hold. If you don't have a mantra you like, I suggest using the mantra of Kwanseum Bosal. Kwanseum Bosal is the Bodhisattva of love and compassion in Korean Zen. And a Bodhisattva is an enlightened being that's dedicated themselves to helping others realize their true nature. Kwanseum Bosal is said to have thousands of eyes and hands, to be able to see the suffering of all beings and help those who call out her name. Using this mantra draws compassionate energy into you while you meditate, which helps you clear your mind. So just for the next 20 minutes or so, we're just going to repeat this mantra in our mind. And if any thoughts come, let them go. And keep returning your attention to the mantra. And I'll start by hitting the muktak, and I'll end by hitting the muktak as well. eyes, and if you want to stand up and stretch out before we have the talk. Thanks for joining us tonight. And I saw a few questions popping up in the live chat. I will be answering questions after the talk, so if you have any questions that come to mind or anything else that is on your mind, please feel free to ask at the end of class. So as we come out of meditation, I want to bring us back to the question we began with tonight. How do you tell the difference between your intuition and conditioned thoughts? During the sit, maybe you noticed how many different thoughts and ideas float through your mind. Memories, plans, self-criticism, habits. Maybe you even caught a glimpse of something simpler. An intuition, an insight, or simply the quiet sense of being. All of these experiences are forms of knowing. This is the subject of tonight's talk. How to discern the difference between conditioned thoughts and the deeper knowing of intuition. So I just want to explore what that really means. I want to start by just defining some of the words I'll be using. There's a subtle but important difference between knowing and knowledge. Knowledge is what you get from books, from school, from science, from memories of your experiences. It's the descriptions, explanations, and stories you've learned. Knowledge is useful. It helps us navigate the world, make predictions, and make decisions. But it's always conditional, depending on assumptions, perspectives, and language. It can be accurate, but only within certain well-defined boundaries. Knowing, on the other hand, is direct. It's the experience of touching reality before thoughts shape it. When you feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, that's knowing. When you feel the sudden click inside that tells you what you need to do, that's knowing. Knowing is direct and unmediated. It doesn't depend on a story, it just is. Knowledge is a form of knowing, but it's only one aspect, which is shaped and limited by thoughts. This distinction matters because intuition comes directly from knowing, not from knowledge. Knowledge is limited and conditional. Knowing is direct and experiential. So here's the next question. What is the source of knowing? This brings us to what I call the mind, or some people call it the mind at large, because I'm not talking about an individual mind. By this, I mean the awareness in which all experience takes place. It's not produced by matter or brains. It's the underlying ground from which all matter, energy, space, and time appear. In other words, the mind is the source of the all-encompassing, infinite awareness which all forms of being arise. I spoke about this in great detail in last month's Dharma Talk. You can check it out online if you missed it. But for tonight, I would just want to highlight how it connects to intuition. Each of our minds is a localized expression of the mind at large. We're all part of a larger field of shared awareness. Our bodies appear in awareness. We participate in it. We also refract it, like a prism splitting light into different colors. The quality of knowing is not ours in a personal sense. It's the direct reflection of this greater awareness showing through our own minds. The mind at large has the inherent nature of being all-encompassing and eternal. Its fundamental instinct is to explore its infinite nature through the unfolding of every possible finite form. But for this unfolding to be possible, the divisions between finite forms must also be sustained, multiplied, and carried forward in continuity. The nature of the mind at large is to unfold possibility into being and form. It also unfolds in us as our drive to express ourselves and create through our imagination, our curiosity, innovation, and our search for meaning. In living beings, the instinctive tendency to sustain and multiply appears as our instinct to survive and reproduce. I say this just to point out that our personal instincts are not separate from these universal instincts. They're extensions of them, refracted into the particular conditions of a human life. This is why intuition matters. Intuition is the felt influence of the mind at large, communication from that deeper field of awareness into our own. When we're clear, intuition draws us into alignment with both our personal path and the broader unfolding of the whole. This is where the feeling of our own sense of purpose comes from. The difficulty is that intuition is subtle. Conditioned thought, fear, and social programming can easily drown it out. That's why Zen practice matters. It clears the mind so the subtle voice of intuition isn't lost in the noise. The tricky part is that we also carry a lot of other baggage with us. Our fears, social conditioning, defensive reactions, old narratives that we never questioned. Our attachment to these feelings can be strong. That makes it difficult for us to hear our own intuition clearly. So how do you tell the difference between this type of baggage and your intuition? The answer is clarity. When your mind is clear, intuition feels simple, consistent, and grounded in reality. It's not tangled up in justification or fear. You don't feel the need to argue about it or debate it. It's direct. That's why we sit in meditation. That's why we use koans. And that's why we train to focus in the moment, so that we can actually hear our intuition when it speaks. When you touch that direct intuition, it's insight, an immediate understanding of the circumstances that comes when the mind is fully present. But insight alone isn't enough. You also need wisdom, the ability to bring together knowledge, intuition, and insight in a way that serves our purpose. Wisdom is the bridge between clear understanding and clear living. Integration is when that wisdom becomes incorporated into your own life. When wisdom is not just something you think about, but something that naturally shows up in your actions. Integration of wisdom is when your choices, your words, your way of moving through the world all flow intuitively from clarity of insight. Integration can occur on a spectrum. It's not all or nothing. This is because intuition requires clarity. And for most people, clarity is fleeting. Consistent clarity requires cultivation. So how do we build clarity? How do we build this clarity within ourselves? In Zen, there are three main foundational practices that help us cultivate clarity. The first is koans. I gave you a koan about your intuition at the beginning of class. These can be stories, questions, and statements that cut through conditioning and bring your awareness fully into this moment. The next is sitting meditation. Sitting still, focusing on a mantra or a koan or your breathing until the mind becomes clear and free from conditioning, from thoughts and feelings that cloud your view of reality. We discussed and practiced the first two methods in this class. And the last one's equally as important, but often overlooked in some traditions. I want to emphasize it here because I believe it may be the most important of all, and it's the very heart of Zen. It's moving meditation, treating your actions as a mantra. This means constantly focusing your mind by bringing your attention to what's happening and what you're doing in every moment. You can practice moving meditation in any activity you're doing. But I find it works best when you do something you enjoy, something that demands your attention and focus. My favorite way to practice moving meditation is through practicing martial arts. But you could also practice this while doing things like yoga, painting, writing, playing music, lifting weights, playing a sport, or riding a bike. Even something as simple as walking can be meditation if you focus completely on what's happening around you. The point is not what you're doing, it's that your attention is completely engaged. When you give your whole awareness to this moment, the activity itself becomes a meditation. Over time, these practices weave together. Through consistent practice, this process of clearing your mind will become integrated into your life. This type of consistent, everyday practice creates a foundation of clarity that helps you hear your intuition and gain insight in every moment and embody wisdom. Here's the practical takeaway. When you practice even a little bit every day, even 5 minutes of sitting in the morning, or simply just give your attention, your full attention, to washing a cup, you're training your mind to become clear. Each day and every moment you do this, your clarity deepens just a little bit more. Eventually, you realize that anything you do can be a meditation. You could be driving in traffic, having a conversation, or sending an email. It all becomes a chance to stay engaged and connect to a deeper awareness. And when your mind is clear, you don't have to keep asking, is this my intuition or just another conditioned response or thought? You'll know. And you won't even feel the need to second guess yourself. In truth, the challenges, the difficulties, and the pains of life, they never go away. Neither do your feelings. The difference is that you recognize this and you have an integrated process in your life that helps you deal with it in every moment. You'll no longer carry the baggage of your conditioned responses and emotional entanglement from one moment into the next. That makes it easier to navigate your life with clarity, with grace, and with a lighter heart. So tonight's question was, how do you tell the difference between intuition and thought? The answer isn't something I can give you. It's something you discover in practice and by continually engaging with clarity in every moment. Zen isn't about believing what I say, it's about experiencing it for yourself. Knowledge is what I've shared here, but knowledge isn't enough. To truly understand this, You need to know this through your own experience. True knowing is what you become aware of when you focus your attention in every moment. You can practice focusing your mind while you're sitting, when you're breathing, and when you're moving through your life by continually returning your attention to be fully engaged in every moment. Then you'll be able to hear the voice of your heart with clarity and align your actions with your own purpose. So if you take these practices with you and you learn to trust them by practicing them every day, they'll teach you to trust yourself. Let them help you hear your intuition more clearly. Let them guide you through your life and remind you of the wisdom that's already within you. I wish you good fortune on your journey, and thank you for joining me tonight. Happy to answer questions about anything I said. I kind of breezed over some of the stuff about mind. If you weren't here last month, maybe it didn't click, but feel free to ask questions. I can elaborate on any of that. Any questions here? Feel free to ask. This is my favorite part of class, so don't hold back. I did have one in the chat, or I have a couple here. It says, why do so many Zen masters focus solely on zazen? Why have other forms of Zen practice like Zen archery become so overlooked? So if you don't know what zazen is sitting meditation. That's a Japanese term for it. It's zoshuan in Chinese. A lot of people think Zen means zazen. It's just a shortened version of zazen for just sitting. I think that's a pretty big oversimplification. As I said before, I really believe probably the most important aspect of Zen is learning how to focus your mind in every moment. Sitting meditation helps you clear your mind. It helps you cut through those thoughts. But when you stand up, the minute you interact with something, the minute you get stuck in traffic, you start to react in a conditioned way. So how do you cut through that? You have to learn how to focus on your mind in the moment. And he mentioned, or he or she mentioned Zen archery. I've heard about that. I've never practiced it. But my teacher taught me Zen through learning how to use a sword, learning how to do martial arts. Those kind of practices demand your attention. If you mess up, you hurt yourself. So you have to learn how to really keep your mind focused in every moment. I lived in a Zen temple for 16 years, and I practiced sword every day. And the practice it started in the classes. We did it sitting meditation, but it continued throughout the whole life at the temple. Everything you do is supposed to be treated as a meditation, whether it's like sweeping the floors or washing the dishes or cleaning up around the temple. My teacher was very, he always pointed out whenever something was out of place, or if you had a spot on your dish, he would say, where was your mind when you were washing that dish? Where was it, off there? You missed a spot. That means your mind wasn't there. So you can check yourself. You don't necessarily have to have someone else looking over your shoulder. But yeah, if you walked out of a room and left the light on, and he noticed, you'd be sure to hear about it. So yeah, I think it is important to learn how to apply that. And so I've started this school here. I also do martial arts training here. I have art classes and writing classes. So I'm trying to give people different avenues into Zen practice, not just sitting. I think a lot of schools do emphasize sitting. I think sitting is an important aspect. but I think it's important to also learn how to apply what you're learning about clearing your mind to everything you do in your life. And the difference between enlightened and unenlightened is people who are unenlightened, they hold on to things. Enlightened means they don't hold it. They're always clearing it out and always free from it being entangled from one thing, from one moment to the next. And that comes from this process of integrating these practices into your own life. Do you have a question? I saw your hand start to go.
Yeah, so you said that to understand what our intuition speaking to us, that's something that we have to discover on our own. But how do you prevent yourself from falling into delusion? Because I feel like delusion and intuition / knowing can feel very similar. So I was wondering how you can prevent falling into compulsive delusion.
Yeah, and knowing kind of covers everything that you experience. So it could include delusion, but how do you prevent yourself from falling into a trap? Whatever your beliefs are, whatever you feel is true, it's important to always question yourself. This is what the koan aspect of the training is. It's questioning, it's asking yourself these questions. And you may not have the answer, but it's to continually ask yourself, is that the truth? Is that feeling coming from a place of truth? Plant that like a seed. Don't expect that you will have the answer right away, but then go through this process of clearing your mind. Sit in meditation. Really try to focus on what you're doing in your life. Find something you like to do that is a moving meditation where you completely have to focus your mind. So if you're, just to give an example, if you're riding a bike and you're in traffic and your mind is wandering off thinking about your parents and your friends and your family, and then you're not focusing on riding the bike, you're going to get in an accident, right? You're not going to be paying attention to what's happening right in front of you. So that kind of activity, when you're doing it well, you have to be focused on what you're doing, or else you're going to, you hurt yourself. I'm not saying put yourself in a position where you're hurting yourself. I'm just giving you an example of an activity that demands your attention. Different other activities like playing music or, practicing martial arts. You don't have to be fighting someone. You could just be doing a choreographed movement or something. But when you're doing that, you can reach a state of flow, or when your mind starts to wander out of the moment, that's when you make a mistake. If you're trying to do a dance choreography or something and you miss the move, that means your mind wasn't in the moment. And so that's just a way to kind of learn how to focus your attention in the moment. So there is no clear, do this and it's going to always tell you this is a delusion, this isn't. But it's to clear your mind, constantly clear it out. Question your assumptions about what you think is true. Keep questioning until you 100% know it's true in your own heart. Then you know you're hearing your intuition. When you have, I don't want to assume anything, but if you have something that you think is a thought that's not quite reflecting reality, you doubt it, right? Something inside you doubts it a little bit. And the intuition, you can kind of, when you're really in touch with that, you won't doubt it in that same way. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Sorry, I had a long tangent about how to do that, but yeah. Any follow-ups to anything I said, or?
I think what you said about delusion being a form of knowing is helpful, and I think I think we do know, and I'm thinking back to times that I felt deluded and kind of realized after the fact that I was being deluded. I think if I were paying more attention, I would have realized that I was being delusional.
Yeah.
So I think I can
Yeah. And I think, in some regard, all of our experiences are subjective. So to think there is even an objective is its own form of delusion.
Yeah, exactly. So like, it's like it's like a tricky question because we're trying to get to a place of understanding no self and realizing that everything is subjective and like from our own mind, but I don't know. Like we have to like use our mind to like understand these concepts. So you're just like chipping away at these things little by little, and it's like you're kind of going from like lesser truths to greater truths. I don't know.
Yeah, and like a lot of times just less wrong about the situation.
Yeah.
But I think, there's a lot of what, in Buddhist terms, I think in modern terms we think of delusions as like, some sort of hallucination or like something like that. But in Buddhist terms, like all of what we perceive as physical reality is a form of delusion.
Yeah.
So because it is all subjective and it's really a shared subjectivity of awareness that we're participating in. But I think you're onto something there. I was just having this kind of conversation with someone last night over here about how there is a process. There's like contemplation. There's like asking these questions, contemplating it, reaching a point where your intellect and your knowledge can only take you so far, but it still doesn't have the answers. That's when you can go to like meditation and clearing out things, and then through that, creating that space in your mind is when you can get deeper understandings. And then, but it's like an iterative process. You have to keep going, and or like peeling an onion until you get to the middle. You peel off the last layer, you realize, oh, there's nothing there. It's all empty. That's what they say in Buddhism too. When you keep pulling off the layers, you pull, you get to the end, and there's nothing there. It's all been a delusion. But there is some value in understanding the way things work here in the reality we're all participating in. So I don't want to discount that by just saying everything's empty and nothing matters. In Zen, in the Heart Sūtra, there's a saying, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. So you have to understand the form and you have to understand the emptiness. And only through understanding all of that do you even approach the truth. So knowledge can teach us about form, contemplation can teach us about form, but meditation, focusing your mind in the moment, creates emptiness. And there's like those things are like two sides of a coin. You can't separate them. And if you only see one side, you're only seeing half of the truth. Yes?
Do you have an example of like in a situation where like that your intuition like actually helped you make a good decision on something? Just curious.
I mean, it's hard to... Good and bad is very subjective. So, from my perspective, my intuition has always led me to where I wanted to be, even though it's not always the route I think it's going to go. Sometimes I think I made a mistake, but it turns out it wasn't a mistake. So things like that happen. I think it's in a certain way, it transcends my ability to comprehend rationally and logically. But, I'll give a pretty broad example. I used to be an engineer, and I felt very unhappy at my job, and but I had done like these are some of these conditioned ideas you have, right? So everybody in my family was like, oh, you need to go to college, you need to get a good job, you should be an engineer. Okay, check, 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 did all of these things, got good grades, got a good job, did everything everybody said I was supposed to do, and then I was like, I thought this was supposed to make me happy, right? And I kind of like kept going, and it was very easy to keep going. You know, the pay was good, and something in my heart just told me this wasn't it. And I had already started living in the Zen temple at that time, and I decided to leave my engineering job and teach martial arts and teach Zen. So a lot of people would say, oh, you know, like that's like my grandmother was like, what are you doing? Like, and but I've never regretted that decision. It hasn't been easy, I'll tell you, but like I have never had a moment of regret, and there was nothing logical or rational telling me to do that. It was only like the voice of my heart, and it got so strong that I like had to follow it. And as soon as every step I took in that direction, I just felt like my life was more and more and more complete. So that would be one example. Pretty big life change, though.
Interesting.
Yeah. Any more questions? Any follow-ups? These are great questions, by the way.
Well, I will say that, like, I would also add that some people are good with, like, following their intuition in some areas of life, and in others, like, not so much. Like, I think that's definitely, like, a thing that goes on in life. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. I think, you know, in some regard, when you don't have as much of yourself invested in something, it's really easy to follow your ego, or your intuition. But when you have parts of your identity invested in certain things and certain narratives, those are really hard to question, and sometimes it's very hard to. There's just a lot of the places where it's difficult is where you have like a lot of unquestioned assumptions about yourself, about reality, and you just assume they're true because it's always been that way, or you've always thought about things that way. And so in those cases, I think it's harder because you haven't like asked yourself questions about that aspect of things you're telling yourself about the situation or yourself, or that, you know, like if I was more, I'm just gonna give a bit of a facetious example, but if I was like really invested in my identity of being an engineer, like I could still do aspects of my engineering job well intuitively, but like something would have been off because I had so much invested of like, I went to college, I spent, you know, 20 plus years doing this and another 10 years working, and I was like if you're really attached to that narrative about yourself, it's very difficult to follow your intuition. And for, you know, in my situation, I think because I was working at this job, and I was so unhappy. It's like why I moved into the Zen temple. I was like, I need to go somewhere else for answers. Like, I'm not finding them anywhere else in my life. And when I started through this process, which I was basically explaining briefly tonight, is just like peeling back the layers a little bit every day. It started to become more and more clear, like not always like, oh, this is my 20-year plan, but it's like a lot of times it's just like, this is the step I should take right now. And then a new path reveals itself, and you have new options, and then you need your intuition even more to understand. You know, you don't always see like the longer arc of where things are going. Like if you start in high school planning like, I want to be an engineer and this is the plan, 4 years of college, master's degree, whatever. Like that's easy to see because there's a path laid, but your own path, everyone's own path is completely unique. even if you are an engineer, it doesn't matter. It's like you still have your own unique path in life, and as an engineer, or whatever it may be. But I think that is what I tell people, is that's your purpose here in your life, is to figure out what you're supposed to do. And that voice in your heart, when your mind is clear and other people's narratives and your own narratives about yourself aren't interfering, then you hear that, and it'll become very clear to you what you should be doing with yourself. Any more questions? They're great questions, by the way. Well, I guess I will end it with that. If no one has any more questions, I'm happy to answer more. But I appreciate you asking those. It always brings a little bit more out of me when I hear what other people want to know about. So, I'm just going to make a few announcements about the school, things coming up. As I said, we have these on the third Thursday of every month. So the next one's going to be October 16th. Also a guided meditation where it's less talking, just more going through different types of meditation together. Mostly sitting meditation. We do some sound meditation as well. That is on the first Thursday of every month, so that's October 2nd. I also host a Zen writing group twice a month. That's on the second and fourth Sunday of every month from 3:30 to 5. This is all on our website calendar as well, and our meetup page. And then on the third Sunday from 3:30 to 5, we have a Zen art class where we make art together. In all these classes, we do a little bit of meditation, and then we all work on independent projects and talk about how we can incorporate Zen into the different artistic and creative endeavors we're doing. And I also do martial arts classes here as well. So if that's something that interests you, that's a moving meditation I hold here. You don't have to have any experience to do any of these classes. Try to make it welcoming for people of all levels. And if you have any questions, you feel free to ask me, or some of the other people in here do the arts and the writings and martial arts here as well. So with that said, we're also going to be hosting just a community mix and mingle social event, which will be on Sunday the 28th from 5:30 to 7. So if you want to meet people from the other classes, we're going to have like snacks and refreshments. Come and hang out, bring your friends. Nothing to do that day other than hang out and have conversations. So, and that's after one of our writing classes if you want to double up on your trip over here. All of this is also, including that event, is on our meetup page. It's on our website. The easiest way to find that is at mindlightway.org. And in closing, the Mind Light Way School of Zen is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We are relying solely on donations to be able to hold these classes for free. So if you found value and you'd like to help out the school, we appreciate donations. You can find information on that on the table near the door, or if you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description on the YouTube channel under the video. I really appreciate you coming out. I really appreciate the questions. I hope you found value in it. And if you'd like to hang out after class and talk more casually, you're welcome to hang out for a few minutes. I'm not going to be rushing out of here. So thanks again for coming. Have a great night.